When he went back into the bathroom, he stripped one of the syringes out of the plastic wrapper and sank the needle through the seal into the vial of tetracycline and drew the glass barrel full and held it to the light and pressed the plunger with his thumb until a small bead appeared at the tip of the needle. Then he snapped the syringe twice with his finger and bent and slid the needle into the quadriceps of his right leg and slowly depressed the plunger. He stayed in the motel for 5 days, hobbling down to the cafe on the crutches for his meals and back again. He kept the television on, and he sat up in the bed watching it, and he never changed channels. He watched whatever came on. He watched soap operas and the news and talk shows. He changed the dressing twice a day and cleaned the wounds with Epsom salt solution and took the antibiotics. When the maid came the first morning, he went to the door and told her he did not need any service, just towels and soap. He gave her $10, and she took the money and stood there uncertainly. He told her the same thing in Spanish, and she nodded and put the money in her apron and pushed her cart back up the walkway, and he stood there and studied the cars in the parking lot and then shut the door. On the 5th night, while he was sitting in the cafe, 2 deputies from the Valdez County Sheriff's Office came in and sat down and removed their hats and put them in the empty chairs at either side and took the menus from the chrome holder and opened them. One of them looked at him. Chigur watched it all without turning or looking. They spoke. Then the other one looked at him. Then the waitress came. He finished his coffee and rose and left the money on the table and walked out. He'd left the crutches in the room, and he walked slowly and evenly along the walkway, past the cafe window, trying not to limp. He walked past his room to the end of the Ramada, and turned. He looked at the Ram Charger parked at the end of the lot. It could not be seen from the office or from the restaurant. He went back to the room and put his shaving kit and the pistol in his bag, and walked out across the parking lot, and got into the Ram Charger, and started it, and drove over the concrete divider into the parking lot of the electronics shop next door, and out onto the highway. Wells stood on the bridge with the wind off the river, tousling his thin and sandy hair. He turned and leaned against the fence, and raised the small, cheap camera. He carried and took a picture of nothing in particular, and lowered the camera again. He was standing where Moss had stood 4 nights ago. He studied the blood on the walk. Where it trailed off to nothing, he stopped and stood with his arms folded and his chin in his hand. He didn't bother to take a picture. There was no one watching. He looked out downriver at the slow green water. He walked a dozen steps and came back. He stepped into the roadway and crossed to the other side. A truck passed, a light tremor in the superstructure. He went on along the walkway, and then he stopped. Faint outline of a boot print in blood, fainter of another. He studied the chain-link fence to see if there might be blood on the wire. He took his handkerchief from his pocket and wet it with his tongue, and passed it among the diamonds. He stood looking down at the river. A road down there along the American side. Between the road and the river, a thick stand of carrizo cane. The cane lashed softly in the wind off the river. If he'd carried the money into Mexico, it was gone. But he hadn't. Wells stood back and looked at the boot prints again. Some Mexicans were coming along the bridge with their baskets and day parcels. He took out his camera and snapped a picture of the sky, the river, the world. Bell sat at the desk, signing checks and totting up figures on a hand calculator. When he was done, he leaned back in his chair and looked out the window at the bleak courthouse lawn. "Molly," he said. She came and stood in the door. "Did you find anything on any of those vehicles yet?" "Sheriff, I found out everything there was to find. Those vehicles are titled and registered to deceased people. The owner of that Blazer died 20 years ago. Did you want me to see what I could find out about the Mexican ones? Number, Lord, number. Here's your checks." She came in and took the big leatherette checkbook off his desk and put it under her arm. That DEA agent called again. You don't want to talk to him? I'm going to try and keep from it as much as I can. He said he's going back out there, and he wanted to know if you wanted to go with him. Well, that's cordial of him. I guess he can go wherever he wants. He's a certified agent of the United States government. He wanted to know what you were going to do with the vehicles. Yeah. I've got to try and sell them things at auction. More county money down the toilet. One of them has got a hot engine in it. We might be able to get a few dollars for that. No word from Mrs. Moss?